Welcome to the Spring Breakfast Club for Fundraising Leaders. We have got quite a few people registered for today's webinar, so it will take a minute or two to get people in. But while you're waiting, if you could just say hello in the chat, say where you're logging in from. I don't know if you can see some spring flowers near you. I couldn't resist taking a little photo of my daffodils in my garden, but if you say hello to wherever in the world you're from, it'll give us a sense of connection. Hi, Rochelle. Hi, Megan. Welcome. Oh my goodness, the point where I can't read quickly enough. Good morning, Laura. Lovely to see you, Laura York. Thank you for your message. By the way, shout out to all the people who are somehow managing to log on whilst moving on public transport. I spoke to not one but two people yesterday who said, I'm going to try and log on from the train, Rob. So I'm sorry if I'm not able to engage with the chat. So, oh, and yes, shout out to Debbie and Nikki at RNLI. Best of luck with your amazing event tonight, which got me re-inspired. Borada Maria. Hi to Sarah Bowd. Oh, lots of familiar names coming in. I'm really sorry I'm not able to see everybody. We are going to give it one more minute because I know that a lot of people were registered to join us. And Anna Shutt and Juliet and Gemma. Hi, Jessica Ship. Enjoyed our chat recently. And Michelle and Rosalind. Caitlin, great to see you. I hope that you're enjoying spring as well. And Stu, lots of familiar, friendly names. Okay, a couple more people to join, but I'm going to get things moving. And it goes like this. So welcome to the Spring Breakfast Club for Fundraising Leaders. I do appreciate you somehow found a way to log on. Goodness knows there are some other things to do on that flipping to-do list, but somehow you prioritized this, you prioritized learning, ongoing self-development, and so on for the next hour and a bit. And I don't take that lightly. I know it's not easy, but Ben and I are going to do everything we possibly can during Breakfast Club to help you really feel the benefit of making time for yourself and for learning with us. By the way, thank you so much to those of you who do these kind posts on LinkedIn to spread the word about our Breakfast Club. It's completely free, but the more people who hear about it and the more people we get to serve through these free things, like with our podcast, I'm always ever so grateful when you're able to share something on LinkedIn. It just makes such a difference to helping as many good causes as possible. So thank you. Katie, let me know that we had 774 people register for our Breakfast Club this morning, which I try not to think about too much because it blows my mind. Obviously, because it's a free event, not everyone's going to be able to join us live, but certainly two or three hundred people during the session will be able to access live, and quite a few more will enjoy the recording. So thank you for being one of them. I really appreciate it, and I don't take it lightly. If this is your first, I know there's lots of season ticket holders, regular visitors, but if this is your first one and you've not done a Bright Spot Breakfast Club before, we do it 4 times a year. We have done for more than a decade. And one objective is to help you with some ideas, insights, tactics, but also maybe a nudge of extra fire in your belly, a bit of energy, but also some tactics you might choose to share with your team. And to state the obvious, we will do our utmost to make it interesting, but that won't raise a single extra penny for your good cause. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power. And you're most likely to apply any of your good ideas today if you quite deliberately, A, write some ideas down as you go through when you're moved to, but B, you set a time, even just 10 minutes today, when you're going to either reflect yourself or share with a colleague what your good ideas were. That is my number one top tip to turn this hour into something that helps you in your fundraising rather than just being kind of a bit of, dare I say it, entertainment. We don't have time for loads of questions, but we'll do our best to make time to answer two or three near the end. If you've got a question, put it in the chat, but start with the word question in capital letters. First of all, I'm going to do a talk about one of my favorite topics, which is how habits actually make an enormous difference to high value fundraising. And I'm going to share what three of those are that are really valuable and a couple of tips to help you implement them and make them easier to follow through on. And you may have heard fortune favors the bold. But interestingly, daring to dream and commit to something ambitious, truly, speaking for myself, feels psychologically uncomfortable usually. Ben and I have long known this, but we've also long known that committing to something more valuable to you, to your charity, actually pays you back. And Ben's going to explore that, hopefully in some encouraging ways that helps you follow through, even if you have to take a deep breath and be a bit braver than the little voice in your head is suggesting you should. And we're going to get you finished comfortably by 10 o'clock. My plan is to finish by 5 to 10. Thank you for being here live. But if you like what we do, you don't have to log on live every time. I started Breakfast Club in person 10 or 11 years ago, but for the last 6 years, we've been doing them online. So on our Bright Spot Fundraising YouTube channel, Bright Spot Fundraising YouTube, we got a bunch of recorded ones with some great content, though I say it myself, not because of me, but because of the wonderful, generous guests who come and share with me. Jumar Johnson does a really interesting talk in one of them about how to make time to think and what a fabulous superpower that habit becomes. Shelley Thompson from Oxfam did a really interesting keynote for us about 6 months ago to do with how to create a culture when more of the valuable things are happening as the norm, to do with how you set culture and set processes and meetings and so on. Many of you I know were here in December for our Christmas Breakfast Club with the brilliant Chris Salt, and he was sharing some really interesting tactics he's used to grow corporate and major donor fundraising for his fairly small charity, Candlelighters. I know that many of you already know all about my podcast, but my second top tip of the day is if you enjoy what Ben and I do today, again, you don't need to just log on at a certain time for a Breakfast Club 4 times a year. We've got lots more of this kind of content completely free, and it's on our podcast, Fundraising Bright Spots, and it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you haven't tried it, my top tip would be just to try one episode and see if at some level you get an idea or two, but also maybe an extra energy or, dare I say, inspiration to follow through on those good ideas. And if you really like it, I would subscribe. I do it, get inspired and good ideas while you're doing the washing up or doing the housework or commuting. Okay, what's it all about, my talk today? I have been studying what happens when people raise consistently more money than most other fundraisers. I've been studying that for nearly 2 decades, nearly 20 years, long before I had a podcast. And there's 183 episodes in the podcast. Long before I had a podcast, I was on the lookout for people who are raising more money than I was. And I was interviewing them and trying to understand what they do and how they think and what they do in what order. And I've been doing it for years. And what I have discovered, a good question to ask is, what are those people doing that increases the chances that they're getting at those results? And not the only answer, but I think a valuable, reasonable answer to that question is they are doing certain things week in, week out, which most fundraisers don't do. And we could call those things habits. But the one really interesting, tantalizing thing about them is when I was a younger fundraiser, I presumed those things were incredibly clever, sophisticated talent and skill, and I could never get to that point. Honestly, most of what those people are doing are actually relatively straightforward things to do, but they're also easy to not do. You can easily get through your day and have not done them. So we could call them habits. Uh, there's a value to calling them habits because if you study how to build a habit, it makes it really less requiring of willpower to follow through and do those things. Um, so I'm in my talk going to seek to do two things. One, what are three habits that very successful corporate and major donor fundraisers and to an extent trust and foundation fundraisers, what are they doing regularly that many other fundraisers are not doing? And then also, interestingly, are there some things we can do to make it easier for any of us to do those things regularly, not relying on having a good day or having willpower? So it's, to an extent, it's the science of habit formation. So uh, I'm going to share three. I'm going to bring it to life with some examples that I've been studying recently. And I'm also going to share some ways you can be more likely to get that stuff done. There's a brilliant fundraiser called Megan Marsden, and she works for Bowel Cancer UK. Hello, Bowel Cancer UK. Hello, Megan, if you're logging on. Um, so Ben and I have been working with this wonderful charity for several years. And the first story, which I'm going to tell briefly, the first success I'm going to mention briefly, is that actually it was Megan's colleague, even before she joined, what they realized was if only we could make people more aware of the early warning symptoms to do with bowel cancer earlier, we would save a lot of lives. So there was a wonderful campaign, you might have heard of it, called Get on a Roll, and they sought out uh, toilet paper manufacturers in the UK, and it did raise some money, but the main point of the partnerships was for those organizations to print on their packaging messaging to do with to do with to let people know about these early warning symptoms. And oh my goodness, this will take you back, kind of give you a sense of it. Um, they managed to form partnerships with all of these amazing brands. I mean, it's a whole nother story, and I've got a whole nother podcast about how they did that. It's a fabulous success. But the point of today's story isn't even that. The point of today's story is put yourself in Megan's shoes. There she is. She's in a fortunate position to have the chance to partner in this existing way with all of those 11. But if you're really thoughtful, wonderful though each of those organizations could be for your charity, one of them could make a much bigger difference to your charity, Bowel Cancer UK, than the other 10. So you're probably way ahead of me. If you look at those 11 brands, which one leaps out at you as potentially going to be able to be more able and want to make a bigger difference in a strategic partnership than the other 11? Other 10, by all means, put it in the chat if you like, or even just think about it in your head and make the decision. I bet many of you can spot which one it could be, even if you don't know about what happened next. So if you were thinking Andrex, you were correct. To be clear, Megan cares about all of them, and she does great stewardship for all of them about the difference they're making. But oh my goodness, which one does she give even more thinking time to? To seek out these extra meetings and work with her opposite number at that one to solve the potential challenges with the partnership? Well, it is Andrex. That's exactly what she and her opposite number, Natalie at Andrex, did. Long story short, after lots of hard work, congratulations on my podcast, episode 166 of the Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. Megan and Natalie share this story of this amazing strategic partnership worth £2.3 million. And I suggest that value of partnership would have been really much harder to imagine or make happen with any of the other 10. So it's kind of obvious in hindsight, but it reveals this truth about the 80-20 principle. Potentially 80% of your results can come from less than 20% of the donors or partners or schools or Rotary clubs in a particular area. And this principle, crucially, is much more powerful than most fundraisers I have found are aware, because it's one thing to know it of these 10, which is that has the highest potential. It's another to then proactively do something about it and skew your effort and your energy and your problem solving in a really extreme way that I've found often the human brain doesn't want to. Um, habit one I'm suggesting that I've observed in very successful fundraisers is they know their top 20%. Top 20% of major donors they work with, top 20% of corporates on their list. They know it. And then because they know it, it becomes easier to proactively find ways to add value to those relationships. An example of this in action was a wonderful fundraiser called Tony Gaston. And he hadn't worked in fundraising before, but he joined EMS International, which is a relatively small charity. He joined in 2014. And that year he came on our Major Gifts Mastery program and he did very well. He took on board lots of the ideas and increased income considerably compared to when he wasn't there and there was no particular strategic effort on Major Gifts fundraising. Long story short, every year that went by next, he kept going, and it built this wonderful momentum. And he shares the story again on my podcast. And if you Google Tony Gaston Fundraising Bright Spots podcast, you will be able to hear the all various things he believes helped achieve this amazing growth. But I'm going to now share one of them with you. The situation was Tony tells the story of it being November and he's working incredibly hard on preparations for their Christmas appeal. And uh, what reason is it's hard is he realizes even if I do all of this perfectly, it's still not going to raise enough money for what our charity needs. For there's still going to be a shortfall. So then he did a really smart thing, and I recommend you kind of get this rather than just slog on and on and on. He decided to have a break. He got on his bike. He went for a little bike ride along one of the canals in Glasgow because he didn't know what to do, but he knew that doing the same thing wasn't going to cut it. And as he got on his bike, his question he asked himself was, where is this money that we need most likely to come from? And he got on his bike and he tells the story on the podcast. I was taken aback by how quickly the answer came to me. Within 5 minutes, it was really obvious. It wasn't difficult. Uh, I realized while I was cycling on along, there's this particular donor. In amongst all my busyness, there was this donor that I'd met 2 or 3 weeks before. We had this meeting, and the meeting went really well. He clearly cared a lot, and kind of seemed interested potentially in doing something to help with these challenges. And he was really wealthy. And I'd just been too busy. It sort of nagged away at me, and then I got busy. Anyway, I sat down on the bench next to the canal and I texted him, would you like to visit some of our work following our meeting the other day? And Tony said, within 5 minutes, the guy texted back saying, yes, when can we book our flights? Long story short, they booked this visit to go and see one of the projects that the charity funds. They went for about a week. Within 3 days of coming back from that visit, he had donated £100,000. I suggest to you that Tony was applying what we could call the 80-20 principle. He knew that not all of the sources of funding were equal. One or two of them were dramatically more likely to be able to make a difference. But crucially, he leaned into that and then he made time and then he followed through on that insight. One last example for now. I mentioned the brilliant Chris Salt from Candlelighters, a fairly small cancer charity in Yorkshire, who came on our Corporate Partnerships Mastery Program in 2020. And one of the things, those of you, I know that some of you have done that program, one of the things we do on day one is we help you do this top 20 because we help you decide who are my dream 10 partners. And Chris created his dream dozen. And 3 months ago in our breakfast club, he shared his dream dozen poster. Can you see how a fundraiser who's decided their dream 10 or dream dozen and put the logos on a bit of paper, even if just for their own benefit and maybe to show their colleagues, is so much more likely to have a good idea at 9 in the morning for, how to add value to them. Pick up the phone to them, say something nice about them on LinkedIn. If you see that every morning, you're more likely to do the top 20 habit. So that's the first idea, know your top 20 and add value to those ones disproportionately. Idea two comes from a wonderful fundraiser who I was able to learn from years ago when I worked for the NSPCC. Uh, During that time, during the well-known Full Stop campaign, she was doing incredibly well and worked with some donors who made an enormous contribution to that campaign. And I wanted to know, how does she do it? And this was one of my first quote bright spot interviews. I wish I'd recorded it, but I spent 2 hours asking her these questions and writing notes about how Pauline does fundraising. And the most telling for me, certainly the one that's made the most money for other organizations since, is this. She said, you've got to be really deliberately, consciously donor focused. What do you mean, Pauline? Well, come in the morning. This is what my mentor taught me. Come in the morning and ask yourself, what are three things that I could do that would add value to relationships with people who care about our cause or could care about our cause? That's step one. Step two is the trickier bit and what sets Pauline apart from most people. Step two is do those things first. Do them before you do the spreadsheet for your colleague or whatever. And it's easy to say, in practice, quite hard to do, given the nature of the many demands on your time and so on. But that is what Pauline did. So even if one day she does have to go to a team meeting or do a spreadsheet for her chief exec on one day, she's still done at least 12 moves, 12 actions, which deepen relationships. And if you do that week in, week out, you are going to get more chats with people who care about your cause. And sooner or later, some of them will be moved to want to solve the problem that they care about and therefore donate. So I like to think of this as not time management, but time choices. To what extent can we make better, more lucrative time choices, productive time choices earlier in the day? Now, I shared this example, on Every Major Gifts Mastery. I share this example. So a year and a half ago, I shared it, and there was a brilliant fundraiser called Debbie Johnson in that course. She works for a wildlife charity. And what she went away to do, knowing how our motivations can fluctuate, if you're having a good morning or a bad morning, it can fluctuate and you can get distracted. She wanted a way to make that habit more likely to happen day in, day out. And what she decided to do was to create a little reminder in her diary, in her online diary, every day to make it more likely she would follow through. Oh, by the way, yeah, the habit is do important things first rather than plan to get round to important things that'll increase income later in the day. Um, uh, those of you who know my work well know that sometimes we call that the eat that frog idea. And some people really like that metaphor, and one or two don't. Um, so, what did Debbie do? She put it in her diary, that pink reminder every morning. And so from that next morning, ever since, a year and a half later, that's been in Debbie's diary. She kindly shared it with me so I can share it with you. And now, can you see how it's not a guarantee that she's gonna pick up the phone to that donor or do that extra proactive thank you card to that donor that ordinarily wouldn't get done, but it is going to make it more likely to happen. She's going to have to make a conscious decision to not to do it or not. Whereas if it's not there, very often she's going to be pulled by the other activities. On my podcast, episode 184, we have had lots of lovely feedback about the difference listening to Debbie explain her habits has made to some fundraisers. In this one, she talks about lots of other tactics as well, but the one really telling story is of a young couple, very wealthy, who in a year donated several different gifts, totaling almost £1 million. But what's really interesting is they'd been quite quiet before this spate of giving. And Debbie says, do you know what unlocked it? Was one morning I needed to think of three actions to do. And although the voice in my head was trying to talk me out of it because they had a young baby, I was prompted to just try giving them a call, inviting them for a walk in the park near them over a coffee. And they said yes. And that was the catalyst, the start of all this other giving. And I would say, even if one's willpower is low, if you've got a nudge there to make you more likely to do this kind of action in the morning, I think it's going to have a powerful effect on whether you follow through. Um, so a big shout out to a wonderful fundraiser called Sarah Horrocks from the Cardinal Hume Centre. Uh, so I This is hot off the press. I got a chance to chat to Sarah yesterday afternoon, and she shared this example because back in the autumn, my colleague Ben did a team training day for Sarah and her fundraising colleagues at Cardinal Hume Centre. And one of the things they talked about was the power of storytelling and finding real examples that bring to life the difference donating can make. So what Sarah told me is that I guess that was November. So then uh come January, uh, Sarah was filling in one of those forms. She's a Trust and Foundations fundraiser, and she needed to fill in a form report for a generous funder who'd been donating 20,000 per year for 3 years. And one of the questions in the document was along the lines of what's a highlight of uh, this year in which we've been giving? And she said to me yesterday, first thing that went through my head was, well, I could talk about the hundreds of people who've been able to use this really good service, or I could talk about thousands of people calling our helpline or lobbying the government, things we've made some progress there. But this idea that Ben had taught us about the extra difference it can make if you bring things to life through an example, I wonder if there's a story that would be a good answer to this question. Again, she did a good thing. She broke the pattern. She stood up and she went and talked to her colleagues who work in the advice team for that charity. She talked to her colleague Alistair. He said, "Oh yeah, I have got an example that. Well, let me tell you." So there was a young woman Alistair told her about, and her real name isn't Marion, but there was a young woman who had been she'd come into the centre with a member of the public because this passerby had seen her really distraught outside, crying outside St James Park station, and uh, this concerned passerby tried to find out what was going on, and it turned out the reason she was so upset is she didn't have a home, nowhere safe to go. So in recent weeks, what she'd done at night time was to ride on the buses or the tubes as the best way she could think of to stay relatively safe and relatively warm. She was so upset now because she'd run out of money, so she couldn't do that. Anyway, one piece of good fortune is this passerby knew about the Cardinal Hume Centre and that it was really close, just a few streets away. So together they walked to the Cardinal Hume Centre, and Marion was able to talk to a support worker there. The first thing they did was sort out somewhere safe for her to be able to stay that night in temporary accommodation. It did turn out that she was also quite heavily pregnant. So they supported her in her hospital visit to try and um, check that everything was okay. And interestingly, not everything was okay with the baby. Um, in due course, she did stay in the hospital. She had the baby, um, and they were okay because she got really good medical attention. And while they're in hospital, the support worker for Cardinal Hume Centre sorted out a flat for her to come back to, so that when they came back from hospital, discharged from hospital, they had this uh, safe place to go. And I talked to Sarah yesterday. So this was happening basically. It happened in December, and I Ben did this catch up with the team where he first heard this story from Sarah in January, and when I spoke to Sarah yesterday, apparently mother and baby are doing well. Oh my goodness! Thank goodness for the concerned passerby. Thank goodness for Cardinal Hume Centre. Thank goodness for generous donors who enable these services to happen at all. And Sarah included that example in her report to the funder. And she also included a new application for funding. And up until that point, they'd been donating £20,000 a year. Guess what? Well done, Sarah. how wonderful. They received a new donation of £75,000 per year for 3 years. It's worth more than three times as much. And neither Sarah nor I can guarantee to you that the story is the only reason why they got the gift or a greater gift. But Sarah has a really strong sense that this extraordinary story did bring to life the impact of that funding in a way different to had she done it primarily in more of, for instance, a numbers way, which I think many fundraisers would have done in answer to that question. So those of you who know my work well, or even have read my book, I know that I teach that going the extra mile to find and be able to share the real examples does make quite a big difference to bringing things to life. In my book, I call it the third law, the law of firepower. The fundraiser who collects, practices, and knows more stories or real examples just will find it easier to influence when you're in conversation, or dare I say it, filling in an application form or a report when with potential supporters. Now, I'm wholly aware that for some organizations, finding real examples is not straightforward. They don't fall in your lap. There may be, genuine difficulties to do with geography, finding them, or understandable concerns ethically and various things to solve. And yet, over years and years of Ben and I teaching this, we found that all of those things are solvable in an appropriate way, in a way that fundraisers are getting more real examples that bring to life the difference your charity makes. One of the challenges, interestingly, though, sometimes people say, oh, we don't have any stories in our place. We don't have any case studies. Every single organization I know of, there are some somewhere. It's just they may not be interrupting you and bumping into you right in front of your nose. But what we found is if you build it, they will come. If you decide to apply this law of firepower, you are more likely to find those examples. And it'll seem insanely simple and obvious, but on my Major Gifts Mastery and Corporate Mastery program for years, I've been giving people a place to capture their stories. That picture, there's a brilliant fundraiser called Imogen on the left there. There she is holding her Bright Spot story capturing notebook, and she's kindly shared a page from it of how she writes down the stories in line with the structure, or one of the techniques we teach on the course. Shout out, goodness knows, I guess it must be at least midnight in New Zealand now, but shout out to one of our Bright Spot members, Lee Martelli, who messaged me to say that she's been doing this. She's in the middle there in Auckland, and she's there sharing her journal where she's been capturing stories. And I know Jessica Ship is on in our club because I saw you saying hello. Thank you, Jessica, for coming up to say hello at Wow Your Donors the other day and showing me what you've done to create your own story capturing notebook. Here's the point. Whilst it may be true that there's some things to do with stories and case studies that genuinely are difficult for everyone in this breakfast club, I suggest that for Imogen and Lee and Jessica going on their way to meet a donor, I would say all things being equal, they are more likely to be able to talk in interesting, dare I say, inspiring or persuasive, confident ways about the difference their cause makes because they've been doing this story capturing habit than three other fundraisers who don't have such a notebook. So I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm just saying, actually, this is a really solvable thing. You don't have to become a genius David Attenborough storyteller. The act of deciding today to get a place where you capture your stories in that moment, it doesn't solve everything in fundraising, but at some level, it will make you able to talk about your cause in a more interesting, confident, persuasive way. We have found. So, what I've done is talk about three habits that I've noticed. They don't solve everything, but doing them will make fundraising easier in the high value space. Spare a thought, though, for what is the science of what causes a habit to stick, what causes a thing to be more likely to take place regularly and with less willpower. I know there's a brilliant book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and I read that recently. I really like it. But there's a lesser known one called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, which I also found incredibly surprising but valuable because it's so extreme. And it taught me things about habit formation that I really didn't know and wasn't doing before. Um, one of the points he makes is the reason many of us have tried to do New Year's resolutions and failed by January the 3rd is for that thing that could be difficult for us. Our resolution or our so-called habit was just too difficult. It was too ambitious. It might not be ambitious for your super fit or super healthy friend, but for you, if you've struggled with eating well or struggled with going to the gym regularly, it was too ambitious a thing. So by the time you went twice and then you failed on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, your brain then said, "See, I knew you couldn't do it. You're a loser. You're not a gym person." Then you felt bad, and now the habit has not stuck because you set an over ambitious target, for instance, of going to the gym 4 times a week and working out for half an hour each time. So a key overarching insight is you're so much more likely to change for the better if you allow yourself to feel good, not bad. So a lot of it is setting yourself up to feel successful. So here are 3 things you could do. Ask yourself, number one, how could I make this habit I desire, whether it's not my 3 fundraising habits, any habit you desire, how could I make it much easier? BJ Fogg finally got good at flossing his teeth by making his habit he would do day in, day out to floss just one tooth, not the whole mouth. Dentists will be horrified but they're answering the wrong question. It's not about, is my whole mouth perfectly clean today? It's, how can I increase the habit that I will floss every day? Of course, what the magic of it is, it's always possible to find motivation to just floss one tooth. Once you're flossing one tooth, usually you end up in the flow and you floss your whole mouth anyway. So a lot of the game is make it easier, shrink what you could feel good about. Secondly, could you hang it off something? What prompt could you make? So that as soon as I do this, then I will do that. So you're not relying on willpower. And lastly, Ben and I do our utmost in these sessions, but also on our podcast and certainly in our training day. We do everything we can to help you enjoy it and link good feelings to the doing of these things rather than make you feel bad for the things that you haven't done. It's the tiniest activity in the right direction we help you feel good about and proud of. And the more you do that, you'd repeat and repeat and repeat, and then the money will flow as well. So to finish up, the 3 habits are: know your top 20% in any type of fundraising and find ways to add extra value to those relationships. And to make it easier to do this habit, decide on the top 20%, like having a dream 10 or equivalent for who your top 5 major donors are, and know exactly who they are and make it visible to yourself. Do important things first. Again, with the science of habit formation, if you've got you can see how it was easier for Debbie Johnson to do that because in her diary she'd set up her own prompt or her own nudge. Doesn't guarantee success, but it makes it so much easier to. I hope you think you see that one could be applied. And lastly, proactively be on the lookout for real examples, stories, anecdotes, quotes, or case studies. And I suggest you're so much more likely to do that if you've got a home for them and it's yours. So you're not relying on comms or someone in another team. As a fundraiser, you are taking responsibility. And I suggest a notebook is one way you can do that. And with all of it, the more you reward yourself and dare yourself to feel good for doing a small thing in any of these habits, the more you keep going, and then the magic is the habit sticks. I'm going to hand over in a moment, but some of you in the chat have done Corporate Partnerships Mastery or Major Gifts Mastery before, so you know all about how it works. It's a 6-month course. Suffice it to say, I love the podcast. I love our training days, but if you absolutely need to grow income in major gifts or corporate partnerships this year, my best possible course I've ever designed is Major Gifts Mastery and Corporate Partnerships Mastery because it combines in-person masterclasses with me, with one-to-one coaching, with 6 months access to lots of other regular sessions and encouragement and resources. There's nothing like it. You get pulled along, if nothing else, by being in a positive group doing these habits. Um, we have a few places left for each of these programs, and it starts late April. If you're interested, if you've heard about these before and you've always wondered, um, rather than the lots of the content, all I would say is I've done it for 10 years and it works. Yes, the techniques work, but there's a magic to being part of a group, doing it together and sharing and helping each other out, as some of you have experienced. So my guarantee is if you're not absolutely delighted that it's working by the end of day one, just come to me. I'll give you all your money back and I'll donate £500 to your charity. You can't lose. Whatever happens, you'll be up on the deal. Um, that's how sure I am that it'll work. It's an investment that will be great for your confidence, but also help you raise more money. Um, if you're curious and you want to find out more, the platinum version is £3,295 plus VAT. The 6 month one, that's what Debbie Johnson did, and Imogen and Chris Salt, £2,395 plus VAT. For one more week, if you want to get a better price, it's cheaper by £400. So it's 1995 plus VAT. But fill in the form today or check out the website. But I would just fill in the form. If you want to chat to me or Ben or one of our team, I'll answer whatever questions. To qualify to save the £400, you need to get in touch with us. Ideally today while you're potentially thinking about it, but certainly within the next week. You don't have to have signed off budget by the end of next week, but you do need to have got in touch. So we've put the form in the chat. So take 30 seconds to fill in that form if you're curious about talking to me or Ben about it, or equally about the kind of team training that Sarah Horrocks at Cardinal Hume Centre did. We can come and do a bespoke session just for your team on whichever bright spot techniques and strategies will best suit your team. Okay, I'm going to pause for breath. I'm going to stop talking about habits and I'm going to take away my slides. And Ben, if you want to bring up your slides, it's my huge pleasure that I get to work with a brilliant fundraiser and consultant and trainer called Ben Swart. I've been working with him for many years. He was a hugely successful corporate partnerships fundraiser at the NSPCC. And for many years now, he's been my colleague at Brightspot. And he, like I say, he goes out and does lots of things. But one of the things he does is, and either for an entire department of 80 people or just with a team of 6 or 7, like Sarah's team, he shares these techniques in a bespoke way. And he and I love this subject of what happens when you really decide to go for it in a way that the little voice in your head potentially was urging you to be cautious and just sort of maybe there's risk to committing to ambitious things. Over to you, Ben. What have you been learning about how fortune does favour the bold?
Thanks very much, Rob. Oh, gosh, that was an excellent session, Rob. If you didn't know already, I really enjoyed it. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. So, I have spent the last 20 years in fundraising, and I'm very lucky that and lots of that was major gifts and trusts and corporate partnerships. I'm very lucky for a huge chunk of that time. It was working with Rob, training and coaching, either at the NSPCC or for Bright Spot. And the last few years, my job has solely been working specifically with causes, with charities, with people. Sometimes that's a CEO, sometimes that's a fundraiser on their own, sometimes that's major gifts, whatever it is. Sometimes that's in a room of 500 fundraisers for a particular charity or conference. And my entire job is to try and pass on these sorts of ideas and these different tactics and ways of working. And what's fascinated me and what my main aim for the next 17 or so minutes is like lots of our bright spot work, there is a pattern that emerges that we begin to notice. And for me, you're going to notice on this particular talk that I do, there's a pattern that I noticed if I rewound the clock 17, 18 years ago to when I first started that is different to what I'm doing now. And so for me, there's one particular part of Rob's talk just then, in fact, lots of it actually, lots of the habits, but one particular habit in that I can think of that when I think early on in my career, I'm not totally convinced that I always did it. So Rob and I were talking about this and we were reflecting. So let's rewind the clock. On this talk, I'm going to do a lot of rewinding because I've noticed when we look at things in hindsight, I think there's some things we noticed that we could have done differently. or steps we took, or when things went well. There's some things we notice. Let's rewind the clock. I'm going to rewind the clock so far that I have hair. Look at that. Look at all that hair. It's lovely. Uh, 18 years ago, I was a major gift fundraiser, and I would love to have said that I was waking up every day with Rob's 80-20 habit in mind. You know, I had a donor pool, hundreds of donors, and I think I was aware of the ones that were more valuable, but genuinely, I don't think I had that clarity. And even if I did, trying to get meetings in with or progress with the billionaires or the donors that were worth so much more, honestly, I think a voice in my head said that was impossible or didn't think I could do it. And certainly, in hindsight, when I was looking at this, what it meant was if I reflected back to my first year in major gift fundraising, I was more likely to spend my time either calling, if I did call anyone, because I was a bit scared to pick up the phone back then, either calling or emailing, and I can think of it, donors who, in my major gift head, I think you call them mid level. They were giving like £100 a month, £150 a month, and in all honesty, they were much easier to get meetings with. Like debt test drives, I knew I needed to do that. I found it much easier to get meetings with people who were giving a much smaller amount. And I don't think I'd ever have admitted that at the time, but without realizing it, I was spending more time there. I was more likely to invite them to an event, to a project visit. I was more likely to get a meeting with them. And it's not to say I didn't try with the trickier, more complex donors, the ones that could be £3 million and more. But in all honesty, when I contacted their offices, I think I was a bit scared. And in hindsight, I don't think that I had fully committed to even believing that it was possible. And if you're anything like me, or you've done this enough times so that you don't have that same barrier that I had, but you can see it in people in your team, you can see it in people that you work with, or maybe you were like me, where you just wish they'd try the harder things. Like there was a particular moment on a training course that Rob and I went on at the end of last year where the penny dropped for me on why one particular decision can help make a shift there. And it can make a shift on everything you heard that Rob described. Now, the best way to describe this is the training course we went on was one where you try and help people achieve impossible things, yourself and others. And there were thousands of us in this conference room, like thousands and thousands of us in this conference room. And we're on day two of this course where you've had to achieve incredible things. And by the end of day one, for instance, you're walking on hot coals, like you're really fired up. Day two in the morning, the host, who is this brilliant presenter, he said, do you know what I want to do? I want to energize everyone this morning. It was a massive room, like 10,000 people. I want to play a giant game of Simon Says. You know the game Simon Says? Simon Says, put your finger on your nose. Now, the host was very good at this. He was really good at tricking people into doing Simon Says and getting people out. Like within the first 60 seconds, people had dropped out of Simon Says. Like over half of the people had gone within 60 seconds. Anyway, you can imagine it 10,000 people playing full out, doing Simon Says. 18 minutes later, there's one person on the stage in front of us all. She has won, Simon Says. She is the only person that got to the end. Now, she's standing there. She's really pleased with herself. And the teacher, Joseph, he turns to her and he has a little chat. And it's almost off mic. He asks her a bit about how did you end up winning? What did you do that was different to everyone else? How did you end up winning? And she has this chat with him. And he turns around and he says, everyone, I just want you to hear what she just said. She said, Joseph, when you asked who's going to play Simon Says, at that point, I made a decision. I was going to fucking win. I was going to win. I wasn't going to just play, I was going to win. Now he turns around to us all and says, I'm interested. Room of 10,000 people? How many of you, when I said we're about to play the game Simon Says, in your brain said, I'm playing this because I'm going to fucking win. That's why I'm playing. Or how many of you were like, I'm playing because I hope I win. I'm playing because Joseph said we would. I'm playing because it's an icebreaker. I'm playing because we have to. I'm playing because it's a process. We'll get through to the next bit. He said, How many of you put your arm up if you made a decision you were playing to win? And when he asked that question and you looked around, barely 17 people had their arm up to say, I was playing to win. In this massive room, barely 17 people. And I remember Rob and I were next to each other and we just had this instant moment of, do you know, there's many learning points from this, but one of them is just how differently we act, how differently we behave, the different lengths we'll take when we don't hope something will happen, when we don't kind of commit to it, but when we make a choice. And what intrigues me is early on in my career, I'm not sure that, oh, well, it's not even, I wasn't, I don't think I wrote on a piece of paper, these five billionaires, I am going to meet them. Someone from my charity will meet these five. I will do whatever it takes. I don't think I did that. Like, in all honesty, how often did I truly commit? Even if that is, Rob, I love Debbie's idea. I remember speaking to you, Debbie, the three donor moves every day. How often do I truly commit to that? Like, especially to things that seem impossibly hard. Like, my aim today is to help us with a host of stories. I'm going to go back in time and forward in time. I'm going to look at things I did well and badly and others have done, and look at what's happened. What shift did we notice after people committed? Because I think when we make a decision, we might be pulled to do different things. What actually happens? In fact, when you look at this, there is a pattern that occurs. There's three key behaviors that happen when we commit to something. Behavior number one, and maybe you can think of this, maybe there's been a time in your life when you said, enough is enough, this is going to happen. It could have been in your personal life, it could have been in your work life, it could have been, I absolutely loved Sarah's story of going to get a story, like Sarah's story of finding more stories that meant the trust ended up giving more. Like, I know it's not always easy to get stories, but she committed. Like, anyway, there's three things that change. Number one, when we commit, I think we notice, consciously or subconsciously, we are a bit braver, a bit bolder. We do things slightly differently. Whatever the process might be, whatever the rules might be, we think slightly differently. The best story that brings this to life is when I met an incredible fundraiser called Nicola Bott. I know some of her colleagues are on the call. Hi, Izzy, and other colleagues. Maybe even Nicola is on. Nicola is head of partnerships and philanthropy at Campaign Against Living Miserably. I met her when she worked at Teenage Cancer Trust. And the reason I remember meeting her, first time I was in the lobby of a bank and I'd been invited into the lobby by the bank because we were down to the final two or three of this staff vote competition for a £900,000 partnership. And it was my charity, and it was Nicola's charity, and it was one other charity. And I met Nicola for the first time in the lobby. And when you meet someone and you're about to compete with them, you meet someone and you just go, oh no, like, she is so good, so determined, so smart, charming, like assertive. You just know this is going to be a heck of a fight. And I, I, the reason I think of this story is 5 years later, Nicola and I got together to create a session for the Chartered Institute of Fundraising on what we learnt from competing with each other for half a decade. That was what the session was about, because we won and lost against each other various times. And Nicola said, so by the way, spoiler alert, I beat Nicola in that Charity of the Year race. So I won the 900k partnership against Nicola. It was one of my proudest moments. But what fascinates me was when Nicola and I talked about it 5 years later, she said she could, first of all, she couldn't believe it. But then when she caught up with the head of the foundation of the bank and asked her about, like, why, how did we not win? This is what Nicola said. She said to me, you wanted it more. Kate is her name. Kate said, but Ben just wanted it more. And Nicola was like, that is ridiculous. Like, I wanted it so much. There is no way he wanted it more. I was furious. And then Kate gave a very specific example. And the example she gave was on the day of the staff vote, when you get to canvas. The staff vote started at 9 o'clock. We were all allowed in the doors at 8 o'clock to begin setting up. At 8 o'clock, I went in the doors of this Canary Wharf floor building. And if you can imagine it, if anyone's been in a shiny skyscraper before, I got into the lift. And in that lift, at 8:15 in the morning, are 12 or 13 other people, very professional people, very important, very serious. And as those doors close, there's just utter silence. And Kate told Nicola a story of what I did, which in all honesty, I'd actually forgotten. And what I said was, my favourite thing about this lift is that every single person in it is going to choose to vote for the NSPCC in the next staff vote. And I just remember chuckles and laughter. Anyway, what Kate said to Nicola was from 8:15 in the morning, Ben's question in his head was, I'll do anything I can to help people hear about us and want to vote. And Nicola in her head said, do you know, I thought I tried everything, but I started at 9 o'clock. And I know that's a tiny little story, but my favourite thing about this was in my head I had committed in a different way. And it did mean on the day I was braver than I would normally be. It wasn't a conscious decision. I don't believe I started that by saying I'm going to, in the lift, do this thing. It just came through me because I noticed there's lots of people here. Anyway, step number two. Number one, be brave. Number two, I think you've noticed when we commit to something that you are more creative, that you don't get, uh, you don't just stop after the first knockdown. You might try something else when most people don't. So what did Nicola do? Nicola went back. She went back to the next staff vote, and but bolstered by hearing what didn't work, she didn't give up. She went back, and in the next staff vote, because Nicola was like, right, what more can I do? What more can I do? I'm going to try something else. My favourite story is she said, it's a Canary Wharf office. This is the bank next door to this one, a Canary Wharf office. This one was actually worth 1.5 million pounds. She said during the staff vote, someone that worked for my charity, sorry, not work, someone who supported our charity, he ran a hot air balloon company. And so I asked him whether it was possible to get his hot air balloon to go up to the same height as the floor of bankers who I was influencing to vote with a sign that said, vote Teenage Cancer Trust. She said, but the problem was, he said, was that because Canary Wharf and the city is protected airspace, you need to get clearance from ground control and London City Airport because they might think that it's a terrorist thing. So Nicola was like, oh, okay. So what did she do? She got clearance from London City Airport and air control to put a flipping hot air balloon up with a staff boat. Now, she talked to the bank about it and she said, actually, we never ended up needing to do the hot air balloon because by the time I wanted to do the idea, the people from the bank said, Nicola, I don't think you need to do that extra step because I think they knew everything else she'd done, she'd won. Now, I love this story because sometimes when I'm coaching someone or a team and we're in a competitive situation or even just thinking of picking up the phone or thinking of what more can I do, you might think, oh, well, I've done everything I can. And then I tell you Nicola's hot air balloon story. Have you really done everything? My other favourite Nicola story, by the way, is I was speaking to the head of a bank, their foundation. The biggest gift that this bank gives out is about 1.5 million pounds each year. Sometimes they give out hundreds of thousands of pounds, but they do give these massive grants. And I asked her, can you think of a time when a charity has really stood out to you? And she told me the story of a particular person. It was Nicola. And she said, I met Nicola just before Christmas, and I must have told her how much I liked Quality Street, but I don't like all Quality Streets. My favourite one is the purple one, the purple Quality Street. So Nicola went back to her charity, where it turned out that Quality Street had donated tins and tins to her charity for children at Christmas. What did she do? She got a box of Quality Street, she emptied it out, and she filled it with nothing but the purple ones and sent that as a nice little Christmas present to the head of the foundation. And years later, the head of the foundation never forgot that. By the way, Nicola did get the 1.5 million pound partnership, the biggest partnership that they give out. Nicola's charity got. Now, I like this because being creative and just trying something else, it doesn't always mean for the massive one. Like if you're sitting there right now saying, do you know, I wanted to commit to just call a few more people, then maybe Naomi's story is for you. Rob has shared this story before on the Breakfast Club, so I'm going to shrink it. But she was on our mastery program, and on day one, she decided, I am going to speak to and thank more of our supporters over the phone. In fact, she decided to do a thankathon. She's from Northern Ireland. Day one, she decides she's going to do a thankathon from this brilliant charity, Fields of Life. Day four, we hear the story of what happened after her thankathon because she got on a plane and sitting there next to her on the plane is a guy who, when she tells him she works for Fields of Life, he says, I know that charity, I give to that charity. And it turned out that 6 weeks earlier, during Naomi's thankathon, she had ended up speaking to him. And the actual story goes that the first time she called him, he didn't pick up because he didn't recognize the number, he said. He told her this on the plane. But like most other fundraisers, I can tell you this, when they tell me, they said, I tried calling, but he didn't answer. So I left a voicemail and then I emailed. Naomi just try it again. And I know that's lots of you are like, oh, I try again, Ben. You'll be amazed at the number of people who don't. She just tried again. At lunchtime, he picked up. He said, when your number called again, I thought it might be something important. So I decided to pick up. It was the best call of my day. No one has ever called just to say thank you. He later gave a bigger gift than he's ever given before. Why? Because she just tried again. Where are we? Um, oh, Number one, it helps us be braver. Number two, it helps with creativity. And number three, speaking of trying again, I'm going to just share my sound again because that didn't come through. But number three, my favorite example is this one. One of the latest podcast episodes is with Sarah Taverner. Now, Sarah, was going for a $3.5 million opportunity. And the reason she's on the podcast is because it took quite a few attempts. And what I'm about to do is play you a tiny clip of the podcast, because if you can picture this scene, it is the 17th no that Sarah has just received. 17 no's. So she has tried to get funding from this trust, a massive trust that gives out $3.5 million. She's tried to get funding from them 17 times in a row, and they've said no. And this year, in the 18th time, she's actually got them to visit her work. She's built a really good relationship with them. She thinks this is the time, this is the one, it's gonna happen. And they're waiting, and they're waiting for the call and the email to say she's got it, and in it comes, and it says they didn't get it for the 18th time in a row. So amazingly, yes, Sarah had been at the same charity for 18 years, but for the 18th time in a row, she got a no. The question that Rob has just asked her is, did you consider giving up? And this is what Sarah says.
Like, absolutely not. We're going back in there and we're trying again, and we're going to kind of put everything in that we didn't include this time. We're going to expand and we're going to include more of, and we're going to keep moving in that direction, and we're going to build off that fantastic visit we did in Cambodia, and we're going to make it even more spectacular. And, by doing that, and maybe from losing, so catastrophically at a time when we thought we'd done so well, maybe that helped to fuel the information we put forward the next time. And sometimes failure is fuel, and it does help you to kind of think more clearly about what it is you want to do and what you want to say. So I feel the pain of rejection and no's almost daily. But it is this, if you believe in what you're doing and you believe that it is right and it's the right next step, then pick yourselves up, dust yourselves off, crack on, is my advice.
Here's the thing. I love Sarah's example for a whole host of reasons. And I get that not all funders are appropriate to keep asking for 18 years. But one thing that Sarah was really clear about was actually we knew we fitted the criteria. Like, we just needed to keep learning, keep trying. And just, do you notice a theme with Nicola? She didn't win the first time, but winning in that year wasn't what she'd committed to. She'd committed to winning at some point with them. That's what she committed to. And so not winning was just another chance to figure out what she could do differently. If you do listen to the podcast, you'll hear the various things that Sarah had tried to just keep going, just keep going. The 18th time, she didn't win the partnership. The 19th attempt, by the way, Sarah wins and gets the $3.5 million gift. It is worth listening to the episode. I think it's not the one that's just gone, it's the one past that. But there's three things that happen when we commit. We are braver, we are more creative, we just keep going. I think there's a time when you could ask yourself the question, if that didn't work, What more could I try? And if that doesn't work, what more could I try? And if that doesn't work, what more could I try? And there is this hunger to just keep going. When I think back to the Simon Says game, truly, when Joseph asked the question, how many of you played the game because you were going to win, actually win, and barely 17 people out of 10,000 put their arm up, the other thing came to mind. Once you've committed to this, the number of people who've also made that decision with that level of determination, it shrinks. I think one of the reasons why I didn't win Simon Says is because I thought the odds are against me. I'm competing with 10,000. Actually, if from the very start I'd said I'm going to fucking win, sorry, like I'm not competing with 10,000. I'm competing with 17. And even then, suddenly the margins of winning are tiny. It really is the difference between choosing to pick up the phone, choosing to write that thank you card, choosing out of all of your current partners, the one that it's worth trying a few more things on. Sarah Pryor, the latest podcast episode. She got an extension with her partner, the biggest partner they've got, because they just tried a couple more things. They just committed, they committed, they committed. There is a quote from the philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, which sums this up for me. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius and power and magic in it. Begin it now. So, my question to you is what is the thing that you could decide to try and commit to? Be okay with it being hard. Like, be okay with not knowing how you're going to do it, but decide that you're going to actually do it. Clearly, if you're on one of our mastery courses or our training course, we work hard, we spend a bit more time than this. You have the group helping you. We have strategies to make a choice on how you might do it. But even without that, I think there's some things you've heard today that you want to commit to actually do. We've got some unbelievable stories of people who have committed and the impact they've made. But crucially, 9,980 other people did not commit to win Simon Says. 99% of other people will not either. I've gone slightly over on time. Sorry, Rob. Good luck making a choice. I invite you to figure out, big or small, what is it that you will decide to do today?
Ben, that was truly wonderful. I am inspired. I know we need to get people away in the next couple of minutes, but it is such a beautiful quote. Would you just bring the slide back with
Oh, yeah,
the translated quote from Goethe?
yeah, absolutely.
Because every time I read it, at some level, the magic of what that quote is getting at does make me a tiny bit braver and more likely to decide. So thanks. We're going to get people away in the next couple of minutes. But just thank you, by the way, all this wonderful chat that's encouraging each other there. I saw Lexi Thompson is there, and just a couple of weeks ago on day 4 of Major Gifts Mastery, Lexi, thank you for sharing your example. I won't go into the details now, but basically Lexi did what Ben has talked about. She decided earlier in the course to get a 6-figure gift for the first time. We called it the Wouldn't It Be Amazing or Wibber tactic. Some of you know that. And huge congratulations, Lexi, and thank you for sharing it with me. That made all the difference. You didn't yet know how you were going to get it, but this magic that Van Goethe is referring to unfolded, and I think the detail was along the lines of £540,000. So just over £500,000 ask you made, and that kind couple of pledge that they will give it. And at some level, that's the story that comes to me, that it is what Goethe and Murray are talking about, this magic where you just commit and decide, even if you don't yet know how you're going to do it. Um, I think I need to get everyone away. If you could take the slides away, Ben,
Yeah,
I'm just going to wrap up really quickly now. So, huge thank you to everyone for all this stuff you've been sharing to help the rest of the group. Today, in the next hour or two, just 5 minutes, decide what you're going to take from this, what you're going to share with your team, and so on. You don't need to come to Breakfast Club to get these kinds of ideas. If you haven't tried it already, check out Fundraising Bright Spots podcast. It's free. Subscribe. You can get inspired while you're doing your washing up. Um, and like I say, our favorite way to go ever deeper so that things really become the norm, they become habits, they're ever easier, and you don't need this inspiration, is just fill in the form in the chat. Ben or Linda can come and do a session in-house with you. Or my favorite way to help you is across 6 months in Major Gifts Mastery. and Corporate Partnerships Mastery, where we can find all the training and the coaching and lots of other resources like this. So do let us know if you'd like a quick chat to decide. Like I say, the mastery programs are cheaper for one more week. Fill in the form today if you're at all curious. By the way, thank you so much to lots of people who've been on the programs, just sharing the difference they've made to you. I really appreciate your honesty, just sharing that this stuff works. Wow, I need to pause for breath. We're going to see you again in June for another Breakfast Club, for a summer one. Last thing, if at all this has helped you, my favor I request of you is please share on LinkedIn, even just a tiny post or a comment, the difference Breakfast Club makes for you. The act of doing that just does make it so much more likely that the hard work Ben and I put in to sharing these three things reaches ever more people. So I'm always ever so grateful to those of you who kindly share or post or engage on LinkedIn about how Bright Spot stuff is helping you. Okay, I said I'd get you away. Thank you so much for everyone helping each other in the chat. Huge thank you to Ben and Katie for all the work you put in to make these things happen. And I wish you all a wonderful day, aiming high, building helpful habits. Let me know how you get on. And I'll see you in the summer in June for the next Breakfast Club. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Good luck.